Hello, everyone. It's Thuan again. Thank you for joining this podcast episode. Actually, it's been quite a while since the last episode. That's because last month I had a teaching schedule, which meant I was frantically grading papers, revising assignments, and handling various tasks, so I didn't have time to release a podcast. To be honest, I was also a bit lazy. That's why I'm sitting here now, making this podcast episode to connect with all of you. A few days ago, I was live streaming, and a guy asked me something like, "How do I win over a girl I met at a coffee shop?" At the time, since I was live, I didn't know if this guy had been to that coffee shop many times and met the girl repeatedly, or if he'd only met her once, was impressed, and wanted to pursue her. I didn't know. I just answered from my personal perspective. Personally, I don't like it when someone confesses their feelings to me after only meeting a few times. I don't like it when "I love you" is said too easily. Maybe for others, it's different, and because I feel that way, I couldn't really advise him. Then I remembered an old story. Back when I used to work as an MC, whenever I hosted an event, I would get dressed up beautifully in those princess-like ball gowns. I don't know how to explain it so everyone understands, but you know those dresses MCs usually wear? They're those sparkling, voluminous, princess-style gowns. When wearing those gowns, everyone looked stunning. They looked beautiful down to every millimeter. Meticulously made up. Hairstyled perfectly, sprayed with hairspray to keep it looking flawless. Those stages usually had very bright spotlights. So imagine in a crowded hall like that, all the lights go out, and there's just one spotlight shining on that girl. She's dressed beautifully, her hair, her makeup, absolutely flawless, plus she has a lovely voice and handles situations well. I think many people would like that girl. And that was true. Back then, many people liked me, many approached me, but not everyone had good intentions. There were good people and bad people. I was very young back then, everyone. Just in my late teens or early 20s. When many people liked me, I felt an immense sense of validation. But I don't know why the more people liked me, the more people flirted with me, the more people validated me, the more insecure I felt. Isn't that strange? Someone standing on stage, shining brightly in front of thousands of people, yet feeling insecure. I didn't understand it back then. It wasn't until much later that I started to find the reason. It was because I had really severe acne in high school. By the time I finished high school, my acne was gone. But the after effects, like dark spots and a few scars, still remained. Normally, as an MC, I was used to seeing myself perfectly beautiful, from my outfit, to my hairstyle, to my makeup. So when I went out in everyday life and took off my makeup, I almost couldn't accept my true self. I felt insecure about that real person, and I was afraid that those who loved my image on stage and pursued me might not accept my ordinary appearance in real life. That's why no one successfully pursued me back then. Because I was too insecure, I didn't accept any romantic overtures. It's like when you're used to taking photos with filters, then you see a raw, unfiltered picture of your bare face, and you just don't recognize it. Back then, I hadn't found myself yet, so I had very societal beauty standards to feel happy. Like, you had to be thin, have fair skin, a small face. I hadn't found my unique essence yet. Even if I found a very small flaw in myself, I would feel extremely insecure. The more people liked me, the more pressure I felt in my life off stage. In my everyday life, when I was just wearing normal clothes without meticulous makeup, I was very afraid for people to see that image of me. But what's also really funny is that even though I didn't want the people who liked me to see that image of me in real life, a part of me also wished they would. I wished, please, someone see this image of me. And after all that, they would still like me, they would like the real me. Meaning, I was both afraid of people seeing my true self, but at the same time, I hoped that person would see me, understand my journey, and love me asterisk, not just an image constructed on stage. Well, that story kind of faded into the background, and I didn't pay much attention to it. It wasn't until around 2022, when I started using TikTok again, that I stumbled upon a song there. You know how it is, right? TikTok songs are usually snippets from really catchy, upbeat choruses, often remixed, so they're incredibly captivating to listen to. When I scrolled past that video with the music, I absolutely loved that song. I had to go find the full version to enjoy it properly. But when I found and listened to the entire song, I was disappointed. It wasn't as good as I'd expected, and I felt a bit let down. And just like that, it instantly reminded me of my MC story. I realized, Ah, so that's it. It turns out I was afraid that when people encountered only the brightest, most vibrant, most exciting part of my life, they would develop feelings for me. But then, when they discovered my whole self, they wouldn't like that image anymore. So I thought about it and realized I wasn't afraid of not being loved. I was afraid of not being loved completely asterisk. I was afraid they would only love the brightest, most beautiful part of me. And when I allowed them into my life to truly get to know me, to have a comprehensive view of me beyond the dazzling parts, there are also dark parts, messy parts, confusing parts. Because I'm just a normal person, right? I was afraid that at that point, they wouldn't accept me anymore, that they wouldn't have enough love for me. So from then on, whenever I listen to a song, any song, I listen to it from beginning to end. I never just listen to the chorus anymore. And I'm someone who loves listening to music. If I'm stressed or have a problem, listening to music helps me feel relieved. I also learned more about music theory, like taking piano lessons, researching different music genres, and when I listen to music, I try to enjoy a song from beginning to end, understanding its structure, how it builds part by part before reaching the climax and chorus. And I try my best to avoid getting drawn into those quick, jumpy clips on TikTok, because when I listened to too many of those, I got addicted. I got addicted to the fast-paced melodies, to the remix sounds. Then, when I heard normal sounds, I didn't feel as excited anymore. And once I realized that, from then on, whenever I went on a first date, I stopped doing perfect down to every millimeter makeup. I just tried to enhance my natural features. I wanted the thing they were most impressed by on a first date not to be my appearance, but for them to be drawn to exploring the rest of me. I'm not saying it's wrong if you want to dress up beautifully for a first date. Humans are complex, and everyone loves in their own way. Just because I do it this way doesn't mean doing it differently is wrong. This is purely my personal experience and what I choose to do. As for how you want to do it, that's entirely up to you. Yeah, honestly, I think we live in an era where everything is so rushed. The best things always have to be displayed first to capture attention. For example, if you watch a movie trailer, it has to show the most thrilling, most bold, most captivating scenes. A song demo has to cut to the catchiest part. Even for me, I teach a content creation course, right? I always tell my students that the best, most impactful, most emotional parts must go at the beginning to keep the audience's attention. That's how the world currently operates. Now, telling myself to go against the current, telling everyone, please do everything step by step, let beauty be something discovered last, after they've understood the whole process before liking it, that sounds a bit wrong, not quite aligned with how the world moves. Yet, that's how I've always tried to practice. Because I'm someone who uses social media quite a lot. I spend a lot of time on social media for my work and for my teaching. So, if I don't try to slow down and live intentionally in my everyday life outside of that, everything would become incredibly chaotic. Even though I've tried my best to compromise with the frantic, fast-paced madness of our era. Even though I try my hardest to live intentionally, there's one thing I'm a bit embarrassed but have to admit. My brain is also suffering from dopamine poisoning. I'm also gradually getting drawn into things that provide instant gratification, like endlessly scrolling TikTok or watching funny videos, everyone. This past April 30th holiday, I went back to my hometown. For our extended family, on Reunification Day and Independence Day, we have big feasts, and on those occasions, we visit our ancestors' graves to clean them and invite everyone home for a family reunion. At that time, I went with my relatives to the cemetery to clean the graves. After cleaning the graves, family members usually stay and wait until the incense burns out before heading home. At that moment, my relatives were chatting lively with each other. But usually, the adults' conversations aren't topics I'm interested in. So at that moment, I just sat there in a daze, and suddenly a thought crept into my mind. I wanted to pull out my phone to do something. I wanted to pull out my phone to scroll TikTok or Facebook or simply reply to a few messages. At that moment, I was startled by my own thought. Originally, people say to stay until the incense burns out before going home because they want family to gather around their lost loved ones. Right, to kind of remember the deceased. But instead of sitting there remembering or listening to my relatives' stories, I wanted to dive headfirst into the land of dopamine. I couldn't stand the feeling of just sitting there doing nothing. I wanted to pull out my phone to scroll TikTok. It meant that action had become too familiar. Every time I had a free moment, I wanted to fill that blank space immediately by scrolling TikTok. So the next day, I decided to go back to that cemetery. I went alone to my relative's grave. I sat down there in a daze and revisited memories of that person, recalled the few years I had accompanied them. And then I cried. I cried for the years I grew up without that person's companionship. I cried because they weren't there for the important decisions in my life. I cried because in my future, that person would never be present again. For important occasions, like walking down the aisle, getting a promotion, having my first child, those significant moments, that person would never be there to share them with me. So I just sat there and cried a lot. I arrived around 4:30 p.m., and by the time I left, the sun was already setting behind the mountains, and the entire area was bathed in a fiery red glow. I walked out of that area alone, and I truly felt lighter, more refreshed. I don't think I would ever have experienced that sense of relief if I hadn't taken the time to slow down, to ponder over everything, to resolve the grievances within me, the regrets I couldn't fulfill. After that day, I went back to Hue to live for another month. Hue is a city where everything is very gentle and slow-paced. I thought that by going there, I would live slowly and achieve what I call cultivating immortality and attaining enlightenment. If you know my personal Facebook, my bio there says, cultivating immortality. So, during those days living in Hue, I really thought I was almost achieving immortality. I felt myself living slowly, being gentler with the world, lighter. And suddenly, an event happened that told me, you're not that calm yet, you're still impulsive and rash. Before I tell this story, I just want to say that the personal information of those involved has been completely concealed, and I hope you don't try to find out who those individuals are. The story I'm about to tell is only about how the event unfolded, how it affected me, how it changed my thinking, and what lessons I learned. I don't want you to go searching for who that person is. Anyway, that person deleted the post afterward, so I don't think you'll be able to find out who they are. But I'll mention it anyway, just to be safe. I'm not telling this story to make anyone feel negative emotions towards that person. So the other day, I was scrolling through social media when I stumbled upon a post that said very negative things about me. Actually, the post didn't go viral. It only had about 2 or 3 likes. And 3 more comments from 3 other people. When I checked their profiles, I found that the 3 people who commented had almost no activity. As for the person who wrote the post, it was also a fake account, but they were very active. Now that I'm calm, I see that 4 people saying negative things about me isn't a lot, it's a small number. But at the time the incident happened, I was frantically distressed because I thought, this means too many people hate me. Actually, in my 6 years of podcasting, I've often received negative comments like these. But why this time it affected me so profoundly, I'll explain later. When I read that post, I felt angry, sad, and scared all at once. I was angry because I had explained things so clearly, yet these people still deliberately misunderstood me. They insisted on interpreting my words in a different way. I was sad, wondering why they hated me so much. Clearly, I'm not a big celebrity. If I were a celebrity and people hated me and blocked me, they could still see me on TV, in movies, or in the news. But I'm clearly not that famous. If people hated me, blocking me would mean never seeing any information about me again. So how much must this person have hated me to post such harsh things about me? At that moment, I felt so sad, scared, and angry. And my initial reaction, whenever I face an injustice, is to want to find people who will defend me. It's like when you were bullied as a child, your first reaction was to run and tell your parents or siblings, right? So my first reaction was to share that post on my story so that people would defend me, take my side. But then I forced myself to calm down and thought, no, I can't. I'm not an ordinary social media user. I'm a content creator, and anything I upload is content. If I share that post, my followers will, more or less, share my perspective, so they'll see me as right and the poster as wrong. There's a chance a small number of people might attack this person, and it could escalate into cyberbullying. And I don't want that to happen. I don't want anyone to be cyberbullied, so I decided not to share that post. But even after deciding not to share it, the frustration, anger, and surge of emotions within me still lingered. So the next step I wanted to take was to comment on that post to defend myself. I wanted to say, hey, that's not right, you've misunderstood me. I'm not that kind of person. You're wrong. I wanted to explain, to clarify everything. I also forced myself to slow down, because right now I was overwhelmed with emotions, and those emotions could easily override my reason. When you lack reason, you can't distinguish right from wrong, can you? Maybe what this person said about me was harsh, but if I completely disregard the context and tone of their words and just look at the information they provided, what if some of the things they said about me, some of their critiques, were actually true? So I had to sit down and think. I know that when you create content, at some point, once you gain public support, you can get stuck in your own well, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want to become stubborn and pig-headed. So I thought that if I wanted to take any further action involving other people, I needed to wait until I was calm and give myself at least a week to cool down. Because I think I'm starting to get old now, everyone. My back is starting to hurt. When I smile, I have a few wrinkles at the corners of my eyes, meaning I'm experiencing these signs of aging, so in return, I should be more composed, calmer when problems arise, instead of being as impetuous as I was when I was young. Right? I think so. So I decided to do nothing for the next week. During that week, I listened to a lot of Buddhist scriptures, because at that time my emotions were surging, everyone. There was sadness, happiness, anger, frustration, fear. Basically, I experienced every negative emotion in the world during that week, so I had to cling to some religion to feel lighter, and I decided to listen to Buddhist scriptures. During that week, I also talked to ChatGPT. I input the information that person said into ChatGPT. Then I made ChatGPT roleplay as that person to debate with me to see if I was truly wrong. Honestly, what that person said about me was completely unverified and biased, based on preconceptions. But I still tried to argue back to find out if I was wrong anywhere. If I was wrong, then I would fix it. Because I thought, even though what people said and commented about me hurt a lot, if it was true, I should accept it and change. And during that week, I also stalked the person who posted. The person who posted, their account wasn't real, but the platform they chose to write about me on was quite interesting. It was a platform where, if you went to their profile, you could see all of their comments on social media from forever ago. So I looked at their comments, the posts they reported, the things they shared, and I started to understand them a little. I took their account ID and searched on other social media platforms, and I found a few more of their accounts. So I continued to stalk. I continued to look at their reposts, their comments, the content they were interested in. Basically, during the week I followed that person, I suddenly understood why they were so sensitive to what I said, why they deliberately misunderstood me. And putting myself in their shoes, I could completely understand why they had such negative feelings about what I said. Actually, I still don't think they were right, okay? The fact that they said such harsh things about me was not right at all. But after researching them, I could completely understand why they said those things. That didn't make me right or them wrong, but it suddenly made all my anger disappear and all the negative emotions within me completely stabilized. Because I understood why that person did what they did. And a week later, I truly was calm, and I thanked myself for being calm, for not being rash. Because firstly, after understanding why that person said those things, yes, I didn't think I was wrong, but I understood it, and my emotions stabilized. And I realized that when facing a problem, everyone has a different perspective. It's like looking at a cylinder. Some people will see it as a cylinder, some looking from above will only see a circle. Or looking at it from a 2D angle, they'll only see a rectangle. Everyone has a different viewpoint. Everyone, more or less, has biases. These biases are formed from experiences, and since experiences are unique, no two people are exactly alike. Everyone experiences things differently. And because everyone's experiences are different, they have their own value systems. For example, a person born with beauty might think, oh, looks aren't that important. Someone who has lived in poverty their whole life will see money as extremely significant to them. Everyone will have biases and a value system depending on their life experiences. And nothing is entirely right or wrong, except for things that are overtly clear, like when the law gets involved. But for things concerning one person's thoughts about another, there's nothing that's clearly black and white. The second thing I'm grateful for staying calm is that if I had shared that post on my story then, and everyone had taken my side, and then gone to attack that person, I might have felt gleeful about it. It would have set a bad precedent. I would have felt my power was great. And from then on, every time I encountered a problem, I'd constantly share it, making me a person who was drunk with power. I don't want that to happen. And after I was completely calm, after resolving all the emotions within me, I decided not to do anything else. I didn't share the post, and I didn't comment to defend myself either. Everyone will have their own thoughts about me, and I can't meet everyone. I can't go around explaining, "Hey, I'm not like this. Please listen to my explanation." People have those thoughts because they already have preconceived notions, so I can't change their biases about me with just 1 or 2 sentences. My job is just to live well. Then, at some point, if they still care and see me improving, they might change their minds. That would be ideal, wouldn't it? But if they don't care, and they talk bad about me for a while, they'll eventually get tired of it. After this incident, I also found it a bit funny. Clearly, there were 4 people who didn't like me, whereas now the total number of my followers across all social media platforms is over 1 million. Over 1 million people like me. Only 4 people disliked me, and I was already feeling so frantically distressed. I suddenly thought, people are weird, right? Oh, not people, just me. I'm weird. I only focus on the negative things instead of noticing all the good parts left. The next thing I realized is that receiving feedback, receiving criticism is not pleasant at all. Yes, as I mentioned before in my 6 years of podcasting, I've received negative comments more than once. But this time it affected me so profoundly because it came to me so passively. Normally, whenever I decide to read people's comments, I've already prepared myself mentally. Meaning, I'm coming here to read comments, and I know some people will like me, some will hate me. I've prepared myself for all sorts of terrible things people might say. But when I was just scrolling social media and saw a post talking about me, it was completely different. At that moment, I wasn't prepared at all. I was simply lying in bed, scrolling social media after a tiring day, and that news hit me completely unexpectedly. I had no preparation, and I was defeated by it. I was knocked down by it. Then I thought maybe this is my karma. I'm someone who, to strangers and casual friends, might seem like a sweet friend. But with close friends, I have a habit of tough love. Meaning, I think if my friends aren't doing well in certain areas, I want to tell them directly so they can change. Like, it might hurt when I say it, but afterward they'll become better. True, this thinking is correct, but choosing the right time to speak is also very important. I'm close with a group of friends, and one day, friend A told me, "Hey, I'm so sad, friend B gave me feedback like this, and I'm upset, you know." So instead of listening to them and comforting them, right, I said, "Hey, you know what, I think friend B is right. You have some really bad habits. You better change them." And I just blurted it all out at them. I mean, looking back now, at that moment, I was also doing something that attacked their emotions, because they weren't in a state to receive feedback. They were simply looking for comfort, a place to confide, but I said those things. I didn't understand it then. It wasn't until I experienced what happened recently that I thought, oh, so this is my karma. I needed to learn this lesson to know how to behave better in life. So from then on, I learned a lesson. Yes, the feeling of receiving feedback, receiving comments about oneself is not pleasant at all. And because it's not pleasant at all, whenever I want to comment or give feedback to someone, I need to inform them beforehand so they can proactively set aside time, prepare their minds, and their emotions to be ready to receive that information. Otherwise, if I tell them passively, it can be a form of attack, just like in my content creation class. Because students are just starting, they'll make many mistakes. Of course, I praise what they do well, but when you're new to learning, everyone makes many mistakes, so most of the feedback I give points out their errors. Even though it's within the context of a class where everyone comes with the mindset of actively receiving feedback. If I point out too many errors for my students without also offering encouragement over a long period, they will lose confidence and think, maybe I'm not suited for content creation, maybe this isn't the path for me. So I think the challenge for someone giving feedback is to make the other person understand where they're not doing well, but at the same time, encourage them to understand that these mistakes are completely normal when starting out, and they can absolutely correct them and improve. I believe that's truly the right, reasonable, constructive feedback that is good for everyone's development and doesn't hit or attack the other person's emotions. So that's the end of today's episode. Thank you all for listening until now. Goodbye and see you next time.